I had probably the most fascinating basketball conversation of my entire life today. Before the Bucks and Magic game 1, I decided to go outside and get some shots up because I need sunlight. This all-day playoff shit is a challenge sometimes. Funny enough, I'd actually contemplated not going because I saw the clouds rolling in, and in Florida, that means it's gonna lightning for a bit and you're good, or you're getting fully rained out for hours. There's no in between. Well, thank the basketball gods I tested it and went anyways, because while I was there, an older man pulled up to the court rocking a UCLA tank top and some Jordans. Never seen him before in all the years I played here, and this is especially weird timing given that there's a pandemic he could be at serious risk in. Either way, he began shooting and I quickly realized he don't miss. So between that and his attire, I instantly took that to mean that back in the 70s or 80s he probably played for UCLA or some college, and so I asked him. But no, it turns out he was just like me, a fan obsessed with the game from his childhood long ago. Only his long ago was a lot longer ago, as in he became a Knicks fan at around 7 years old during the 60s. Yes, I said the 60s. I'd hit the fucking jackpot. Here I am aimlessly shooting around for no other reason than maintaining my health, and a talking basketball history encyclopedia pulls up out of nowhere. You know how I've mentioned that Wilt Russell has seen all of NBA history and that I'd love to get an archive type book from him? Yeah, this is about as close as I've gotten, but not as close as I planned to get. So we talked while we shot around, had to be a good 45 minutes, and I asked him everything that came to mind, trying to beat the incoming storm that was rolling in. Didn't know how long I had and didn't know if I was going to see him again. But mind you, I had no plan of making a video at the time. I was just talking to him as a fan to a senior fan. So the things I'm about to tell you are all from memory, and definitely not in as much detail as I would have liked. However, if our paths ever cross again, best believe that tape recorder and notebook are coming out. Not gonna waste your time and make you wait on this. Without me even asking, he offered that Kareem was his GOAT. He said he marveled at how for years and years defenders knew exactly what he was gonna do, yet nobody could stop it. The skyhook, of course. He also mentioned his time with the Bucks, saying a lot of people didn't realize in those younger days that he would handle the ball a bit. He compared it with today's game, saying he couldn't imagine if Kareem had the green light today's 7-footers have in terms of being able to do what they want on the court, like shooting from anywhere or handling the ball. Think Cat or KD. As a matter of fact, yeah. He said that early Bucks Kareem, had he have been able to play the way today's bigs are encouraged to, would have been comparable to KD. I mean, I don't know about that, but point taken, cause he went on about how incredibly different the game he grew up with was compared to long-range bombing today's game is built off of. So does that mean Kareem would have been KD? I don't know of many players in history that would have, regardless of playstyle, but it was interesting to hear someone who watched his younger days ponder what he could have turned into with different rules, especially because I didn't even ask him that. More GOAT talk. You know I had to ask him about MJ and LeBron, being that he saw both of their careers from start to finish and had historical context in which to frame their careers. Upon being asked, he took no time in assuring that he considered Jordan the better player. Funny enough, he went straight to Jordan as a closer, basically alluding to how watching him felt like a movie and how perfect some of his moments were. He also brought up The Last Dance unprovoked, saying that it had only served to confirm what he already thought about him. So nothing anybody hadn't already heard there. And I did clarify, he asserted that he'd put Kareem first and MJ second. More GOAT talk. I asked him about Kobe. He did not have a positive personal opinion of him, but he definitely had respect for what he built during his career, and I appreciated his honesty because, let's be real, a lot of people got really fake after January. The way they talked about him before the tragedy and how they talked about him after, it's just not the same, so I at least appreciated the consistency here. But he did say that when Kobe was young, people tried to test him because they thought he was soft. They just saw him as this kid from Italy who had a pro hooper for a dad, and that gave him all the advantages that he needed to succeed. So he was impressed to see him become as great as he did. That's a lens I never thought about it from. You know about Steph Curry having a pro hooper father, but when you think about Kobe, his work ethic was so maniacal and so past anything that was already in the league besides probably Michael Jordan. You really don't think about Kobe being like Steph Curry coming from those type of advantages. Alright, I really needed him to break the tie here because for the longest, I've never had any real indicator of who was better out of these two. For as much as I've looked at them, for all I've cared, you could just flip a coin and put one of them on my squad. I'm good either way. So I asked him who he thought was better, and he struggled with it just as much as I always have, but I'm gonna guess that his answer was Larry. It wasn't a clear or definitive yes, because it was clear he loved watching Magic, but as a Knicks fan, he hated the Celtics. And then he went into a story about Bird. He says that once, he was at a Boston and Cavaliers game when Cleveland had had World be Free. He says the Celtics were winning by about 20 points and the Cavaliers were just playing terrible basketball. What's new there, right? But specifically, he said Free ran up on a fast break, took a 3, missed it, and that resulted in an easy Celtics bucket. He said the very next play, Free took another 3, missed it, and Larry Bird was just disgusted with what terrible basketball Cleveland was playing. So the next trip up the court, Bird dribbles up, nails a 3 of his own, and then points at World be Free like, see, that's how you do it. Like he was disappointed in the team he was playing against for playing so damn terrible. And I doubt I'm ever gonna find footage of this moment, but from everything that I've ever read about Bird and Trash Talk, I'm gonna take his word for it. Talking about Bird, we got on the subject of if greats like him could play in a league today. He said that first off, Bird was a basketball genius and he believes that he could play in any era. But like me, he also pointed to some of the players such as Luka and Jokic that dominate today's game with pure fundamentals. He's currently also a Nuggets fan and loves Jokic's passing, brought up his specific full court passes that we see nearly every game, and basically believes that any fundamentally sound and intelligent past art could find a facet of today's game to excel at. As for Magic Johnson, he says the Showtime Lakers were probably his favorite team to watch because they could play any style of basketball once they had Worthy starting, and he absolutely loved watching them, quote, kick the Pistons' ass. I had to know what it was like to live through the Bad Boys era while not actually having been a fan of the team. He hated those Pistons, and also hated Isaiah Thomas. He hated IT for what he did to the Knicks, saying that he set the franchise back around 10 years, but he was specifically disgusted with the way they played, as many from that time have reported. However, he did say he'd seen Isaiah Thomas play live, and if I'm not mistaken, he claimed to be at the ankle game during the finals. But what I found more fascinating was that he said people never really realized how fast IT was. Back in his day, TV screens were tiny, so he brought up that you were watching him run across this small screen and it didn't really translate well. So he said that witnessing his speed in real life was insane, and I think we moved on before I could start asking him about Z compared to modern superstar point guards like Chris Paul. So the guy has seen practically every great team to ever exist. He lived through the glory days of the Knicks with Willis Reed. He witnessed our 2016 Warriors in full. But who was the greatest? Without any prodding or suggesting from me, he said the greatest team he'd ever seen surprisingly was at the end of the Bulls era. So that would be 1998 if that's what he actually meant. I said 1998 aloud, trying to ask him if that was the specific year because I was a bit confused. And I can't say for sure if that was the year he was specifying, but it's not even the first time I've heard someone say that that was the best version of Jordan. Regardless of what year he really meant, it's fairly easy to figure out that he considers one of Michael's teams the best, so be it 96, 97, 98, it's kind of what you would expect. So, were all the stories about Wilt true? Was he really that strong? Was he even real? This is one I need him to elaborate on more because we didn't stay on this topic as long as I meant to. But yeah, he said the stories were true, that Wilt was a perfectly cut giant, and was as strong as we heard. But I didn't get to ask him about the specific stories because he focused on more of the dynamic between he and Russell. And yes, he was real. He recalled watching Wilt live during his Lakers days, so at least we can confirm that. He went on to say that Wilt was the better player than Russell, but as you've probably heard many times before, he went on to say that Wilt was content to collect big checks and score the ball. So while being the better player, he offered that Russell was the better winner, and at the end of the day, he said that's what the game was about. So if I ever find this guy again, I need way more info here, specifically about the strength stories. Was he really out here snatching up grown men by their collar? I don't know, but it was nice to hear from someone who was watching that he believes Wilt was the better player. That's still disputed. Bro, when he was watching the NBA Finals, the games had already been over for some time before he got to see them. They weren't broadcast live yet, and I've always wondered how that worked. Was there anybody spoiling the game? Did word get around fast enough before that night to see who'd already won? He said that obviously he didn't want to know who won, so not only did he never seek it out, but where he was from, people would just be playing basketball until it was dark outside, until it was time to watch whatever game had been taped. So imagine that. You and the homies on the blacktop playing the entire day. You play till it's dark out, you know there's a huge game, probably a finals game that night, and you have no clue about anything, who scored what, if someone's hoisted the championship. I find that mind-boggling in the world we live in today. I asked him about if it felt the same watching the games knowing the result had already happened, and he kinda kept talking about them playing basketball the whole day. So I'd assume it was pretty much like watching a TV show. Like, what difference does it make as long as you don't know what happened? Well, back then when it was all they knew. Of course that would be ratchet today, but that's when he was young. He said he couldn't afford Knicks tickets as a kid, so when he started making money, he actually worked in some business that got him close to celebrities, players, and it made it very easy for him to attend games. So he did it like it was going out of style. From that, he mentioned that he saw plenty of Dr. J live, because at a point in his life, he didn't live far from Philadelphia and it wasn't hard to get tickets to his playoff games close to the floor. I vaguely remember David Stern telling a similar story about this in a Dr. J documentary, and man, how times have changed. He started bringing up players that he was impressed with, and a specific one he pointed out was Allen Iverson. He looked at me and he said, "You're bigger than AI." So yeah, the fact that he had any type of prolonged dominance in the league remains one of the biggest freaks of nature of all time that probably gets overlooked when people are trying to call him overrated. Towards the end, he finally got curious enough to ask, "What do you do that allows you to be out here midday shooting around?" And I just laughed because I've been doing what I want for so long that it never occurred to me it's kinda not normal to be able to select what you do with your time all day. And I told him about this. I told him all about YouTube, Twitch, you all, and I was thoroughly surprised about how well he understood everything for his age. Not his intelligence or anything, it's just, obviously, I didn't expect him to be super tech savvy. And he started asking me about how I was able to use NBA footage, where does the advertising come from. He was well aware that damn near everybody these days has a podcast, and so I was pretty shook. I'm really used to people just hearing I do YouTube and getting confused and moving on. But in the end, once he understood all, he said, "Good for you. You're gonna love life. You're doing something you want." And man, to hear that from someone who's probably seen so much in life and who's lived most of it already, it really did mean a lot. You're gonna love life. I never saw this guy before in all my years shooting at this court, and I don't even know if I'll see him again, but I will absolutely bring him on the channel if I do. We were talking about it on Twitch and somebody said, "You met basketball reference today," and I realized what a mistake I made not networking right there. Again, we were just kind of shooting shits, and I was trying to ask him as many questions as I could before it started pouring outside, so I obviously didn't get as many stories as I wanted, didn't get the elaboration on some of the stories that I would have liked. I was just trying to soak things in from a person who's seen almost every drop of NBA history. But he could have also very well just been a figment of my imagination like that Polar Express scene, just for basketball, the Basketball Express. Either way, that was probably the most fire and informative basketball conversation I've had with someone in my entire life. Hopefully we'll meet again.